goals. These were established previously in collaboration with Mr. LeBron, Ms. Flanagan, and I, and with input from the school board. And this is what we're expecting as far as the input we need from all of you. And so you can see right now that that is input related to protocols for health, safety, and communication. Reviewing the health data to include the incidence of COVID-19 and other illness among staff and students, the quarantines, the resulting contact tracing, and data related to school or classroom reopenings and closures. For instance, there isn't a lot of guidelines related to when a whole classroom needs to go into quarantine, or when, no, that's not necessarily true. I'm going to rephrase that. When it's best if a whole classroom is just temporarily closed. For instance, earlier on, we, for 2 weeks, closed one of our kindergarten classrooms because we had more students gone in quarantine than we had students present. And when we were making that decision, we thought, boy, it really might be nice to have a team of professionals that could help us with some of that, because that is not the purview of public health. That's a local decision. And so that would be something, as an example, that we may come to you and ask you for input. Also reviewing census tract data related to the communities comprising the OSD and how that compares to Dane County. Reviewing data related to the impact on student and staff mental health. And then finally, reviewing and assessing related scientific research regarding COVID-19. So what we are really hoping for from this group, and after listening to all of you speak, I feel very confident that you are the exact right people for this group, and that is to provide the expertise on the things on which our educational team is knowledgeable, but not experts. And consequently, we really look forward to integrating your input into our action. So Ms. Flanagan or Mr. LeBron, is there anything you'd like to add to that before I open it up to any questions that they might have?
Yes, I'd just like to say a couple of things. One thing that's important for all of us to understand is there isn't a single person on this call who doesn't want our kids to be back in school. We know that. Everybody on this call knows that. Our goal here is to get our kids back to school safely and to keep them in school. That's what we're working towards here. It isn't to go rogue. It isn't to gather up this head of steam and go off on our own, as much as it is to understand how to get our kids back safely and how to keep them in school safely. And so, and we're all in this together. Many people have asked about Dr. Bergstrom's role or the school board's role in that process. And it's important to know that this is without question an operational issue. It is Dr. Bergstrom's role to manage the operations of our schools, and we trust her to do that, but with our input. And there are times from time to time where we just don't agree on things, and that's okay. Individual school board members don't agree with other school board members, and Dr. Bergstrom doesn't necessarily agree with individuals, but we all are working towards getting our kids back to school safely and keeping them in school safely. So I just wanted to remind everybody that that is our goal.
Thanks, Tim. I really appreciate, sorry.
No, go.
Tim, I appreciate your comments. I just have a couple other things to add. These are really challenging times for everybody. There's a lot of suffering going on in many forms, and we are really happy that you have agreed to take the time to be with us to help inform our decision making and help us set the path forward. Because as Tim said, we want to get our kids back in school, and when we do that, we want them to stay there. I think a couple more important information items too, just for this group, is the scope of what we're working with here. So we have 4,000 students that are in the Oregon School District. That's 2,400 families that live in 10 municipalities and 3 counties. So that kind of gives you a sense of the scope and depth of who we are. I will tell you also that about 19% of our school district population is economically disadvantaged. And this is DPI phrasing in terms of categories, but about 87% of our student body is white, and about up to about 5.7% is labeled as Hispanic, and 1.8% is Black. And so I think those things are also very important as we inform our decision making around COVID and how we make decisions as a school district. So as Tim said, we're all part of a really great team here. You are going to bring a lot of things to bear and have a lot of good input on how we make decisions and what we do moving forward. So I'm so thankful to all of you that you've decided to join us.
Thank you. And I know we combined a couple of slides there, and it's very good because it all is intermingled, and that is the working group goals and the distribution of leadership within the district. So at this point, does anyone have any questions related to the goals? And I will point out that there will be opportunities for questions later, as well as an invitation to send me questions after you've had an opportunity to ponder that we can then integrate into the December 7th plan.
This isn't a question so much about the goals. This is more for the recording. Lauren, if you want to do this, the closed captioning for GroupMe are spot on. And if they help at all, turn them on for the recording, because I love using them as a hard of hearing person, but I've also noted they are extremely good. So that was it.
Good, thank you. That's good to note that you find them to be accurate. All right. Then we've spoken a little bit about the governance model, and that is, as superintendent, I am the person who makes decisions that are informed by my team and related to the operations of the school district. However, I am the sole employee that reports to the board directly, and I am responsible for implementing the decisions made by the board. So it's a very, it's sort of a yin and yang relationship, where they let me know what is important, what the guiding principles are, what is the 30,000-foot direction, and it is my responsibility to implement it. However, when we get down to things like our journey during the pandemic, I would say the board is significantly more involved in giving input and feedback on the operational piece, because that is what it takes to work together well during a time when we're, consistently in some form of crisis, because it isn't school day as usual. Everything is different. And it takes all of us thinking differently and working together differently and being willing to give very open and honest feedback. So every decision I make is fully informed by what the board as a whole is thinking and the direction they're giving. So it's a very important relationship, because that's how we're functioning well at the moment. And I think that you've perhaps heard of some other school boards that have really struggled in this trying time. And I think that we have all done well with differing opinions. I'm very proud of how well we've worked together, actually. So anything else to add on that, Kristen or Tim, before we move to the next piece?
Nothing from me.
Nope, nothing for me either.
All right. Then the other piece that I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page with, and this is our 5 values have been something that people have really connected with and understood well, but I wanted to talk for a little bit about how they're informing us throughout this process, which means that they will be informing us throughout our work as a medical working group too, because whether it is a member of the administration team or a board member, collectively we're very committed to the 5 Oregon values and how those values drive our actions and thus drive our decisions. So what you'll note here is that our students are always at the center, as is the whole child emphasis. And you'll note that, mental health and social emotional learning are a really critical part of what we do, not just every day during times of normalcy, but in particular during this time. You'll also note that our community and our educators are a critical part to our values and how our values move us forward. And consequently, as we're making decisions throughout this time period, we are making decisions with our students at the center, but also consistently considering what is the best possible course of action for our educators and for our community, because we are all in this together in service of our kids. So our values drive our actions. And then we also have specific guiding principles to help us make decisions during this time period. While all the things you see in the puzzle piece with the apple at the center on the white side of the screen, those things are important at all times. And they're certainly connected to our values. There are just some things we're lifting in importance in order to ensure we're making solid decisions. And of course, the first is health and safety. But we also know that health and safety, they have multiple meanings, right? Physical health and safety, as well as mental health and emotional and social learning that contributes to that health and safety. Offering a high quality education, no matter the format, and then whatever systems we're creating, ensuring they're flexible and adaptable. And you'll notice that all of those things are still around our 5 values, right? Because they're connected to it. We have also pulled equity out and put it at the center of our discussions, because I think we can all agree that the pandemic has exacerbated existing inequities within our system and really shone the spotlight on them. And while eliminating the predictability of certain factors with success in academics, well, that has been a part of our equity journey all along. We're paying extra close attention to that right now because of the impact on many of our groups of students. We also know that given the fact that you're leaders in your field, I know that all of you probably facilitate many meetings. And you not only facilitate those meetings, but you work in collaboration with the people who are also experts in their field. And consequently, you know that sometimes we have to ahead of time set up agreements for how we will work together. And that ends up helping us become our most functional selves within the group. So as educators here in the Oregon School District, all of the administrators are trained in something called adaptive schools. And adaptive schools is a framework that really enhances facilitation processes and skills. And one of the key components is ensuring that there are norms around collaborative work. And this is certainly very collaborative work. So we will go back to these norms on a regular basis, because it's always important to remind ourselves of how we work together. I'll just do a really brief description. And then, as I said, we will refer to this in future meetings. And the first is pausing to ensure you are truly listening to what other people are saying. Because I know that at times I certainly fall into this trap, and I think most people do. And that is, as someone's talking, you're formulating a response. But really the pausing piece is to say stop and truly listen to someone else before you begin responding to what they say. So that's one of the collaborative norms that really help people work well together. And related to active listening, I think it's very important that I am an active listener, because I am here to learn from all of you. Consequently, we will be utilizing a facilitator at future meetings, so that someone is facilitating the meeting and I am able to be a person who is a participant and an active listener to the expertise being shared. Paraphrasing is a way after someone has made a point to ensure you understand it by repeating it back to them to ensure that there is a common understanding of the point someone is trying to make. The third is posing questions, and that is ensuring that we all feel comfortable being able to continually ask questions when people are presenting information, knowing that we're considering the posing of questions to be a solid practice and meant to better inform our understanding of the point that is being said, and not, and this gets to number 4, not a criticism of the person who is presenting the material or presenting an idea. The norm of putting an idea on the table means that someone is presenting, whether it is research or whether it is their own practical experience. The idea is on the table, and it is not the person. And so we work very hard to ensure that if we're critical of the idea, it is of the idea and not the person presenting it. Ensuring that we're providing data to support points that we are making, to consistently pay attention to ourselves and to others and how people may be feeling throughout the discussion. And then one of my favorites, and I think it's really evident that this is the case with this group, is to always presume positive intention when someone is in a group and they're making a statement or presenting an argument. And there is positive intention, or all of you people who have extraordinary expertise wouldn't be spending your Monday nights in meetings to assist the school district. So we'll go back to those. We certainly won't belabor them, but I want to make sure that we have working agreements and we're consistently giving thought into consideration into how we're interacting with one another. So now, this is when I'll do a little historical timeline so that you can have a better understanding of where we've been and where we're going, and know that there will be an opportunity for questions, but also if you prefer to jot them down and send them to me. As I mentioned previously, we'll use questions that you are formulating as you're listening to establish the agenda on December 7th and perhaps some carryover into the 21st also. Okay, so to begin in the beginning. The beginning really was, I think it was March 17th when there was the executive order to close all schools. So of course we had been discussing this and had been in many emergency meetings to discuss it. But when it actually happened is when we had and the administrators who were in the room will remember this, we had a Sunday morning meeting in the Netherwood gym with chairs spaced far apart and beginning the real nitty-gritty of planning to actually be closed. And at that point, of course, we assumed, as I'm sure did many of you, but not all of you, who might have the expertise that will allow you to definitely have a better, more accurate prediction of the future. But many of us thought that this would be something that would last a couple of weeks. So that was our thinking in March. And by the time we reached May of 2020, that is when we knew that it would be a longer period of time. And we knew that we had to begin our fall planning. So that started back in May. So we divided as administrators into facilitators for multiple different groups. And you can see the 5 groups along the bottom. Each of those groups was comprised of our staff members, in addition to other people who had some outside expertise on occasion. And then so there were 5 committees that started running in May. And then we had the district office steering team that met twice a week. And that was comprised of all of us who ran the committees, so that we were coming together and ensuring communication for every aspect of our planning. And what I think is really important to note is that instructionally, or under the academic planning committee, we knew how to operate face-to-face. We didn't spend time discussing face-to-face instruction. That group spent time preparing in case there was a virtual instruction component, because that was the scenario that would require the most change and planning in order to be ready. Just like the operations side, they planned as if we would be fully open in the fall. So that was when they had the most logistical and procedural planning involved, of that possibility. So they planned according to that. That way, we already knew how to do what we would normally do, and we were planning for the things that weren't a part of our average. So this is still how we are working our twice weekly meetings. There's an update under each of these categories or headings because we found them to be very effective in ensuring that we are staying prepared for every aspect of the reopening plan. So that started in May, and it continued all through the summer and involved at least 100 staff members. Then on July 30th is when we actually presented to the school board, and there were a lot of families who were watching from home, what the fall plans would be. And you're probably, if you're a parent in the district, you're very familiar with our options. We had a phased restart option and an Oregon online option. And it went into about 1/3 and 2/3. 1/3 of our families, or a little less than that actually, I think it was about 25% of our families went into Oregon online. And then the rest chose phased restart. And that was something that was very important to us, to be able to have at least a couple of different pathways for our families to engage. And we asked people to choose between the two. And we knew that the plan for Oregon phased restart would be continually reassessed based on the health metrics. Now, at the time that this particular plan was presented, we had been meeting regularly with public health in Madison and Dane County. And when I say regularly, I'm meaning weekly since March. There had been meetings. However, at this time, they did not have any specific school metrics in place. So as we were planning, as other Dane County school districts were planning, we were planning based on the knowledge that was available at the time and the guidance that was coming from public health at the time, and the really influential guidance at this point was the importance of social distancing and masking, in addition to the many protocols that needed to be put in place in order to keep our students safe. So this is what the plan looked like in July 30th. And you'll notice that we were starting in-person groups for 4K through grade 4 and students with very specific needs. So that's how we went forward. And then August 21st is when Public Health in Madison-Dane County put out emergency order number 9, which at that point had said that virtual instruction was to be how schools in Dane County opened, except they had just recently developed reopening metrics, and they were the development of those metrics were informed by the Harvard plan and CDC and certainly Minnesota. And so by the time emergency order number 9 actually came out, K2 had met the metric that they had put together, which was a 14-day average of 54 or fewer cases per day over 4 weeks. So that really changed our plan related to grades 3 and 4, because we had planned on bringing them in small groups to start the school year also. Well, then on September 10th is when the Supreme Court injunction came. And following that, because the Supreme Court injunction, as you're all very aware, stated that public health didn't have the, or it stated that it didn't have, it was a stop to their order to have all grades virtual except for when they met the specific criteria. stating that they most likely didn't have the authority to do that. And this is the response to the schools from public health at that point, which is where they strongly urged all schools to continue the voluntary phasing in of classes for in-person instruction in grades 3 through 12, which starting December 10th is the advice that as a school district we aligned ourselves to. And that brings us to, all right, so what did it look like past then? What does it currently look like? Well, all students began online schooling on September 8th. The first week of September for K through 8 was really about preschool year conferences with teachers. So we made sure that that was scheduled during that time period. Then on September 14th, that's when 4K through grade 2 started to come in just 2 hours a week. So sort of a tiny dose of in-person schooling to ensure that our youngest learners felt comfortable with the safety procedures and were feeling comfortable with things like masking and physical distancing, because all of that, of course, would be very new to them in this environment, even though they may have been doing the masking at home. So that started on September 14th, in addition to students whose IEP teams made the decision that they need some in-person instruction. Then, after we did that for a few weeks, October 5th is when we started bringing in 4K through 2 for half days. And this, of course, was right around when the numbers were rising rather rapidly, related mostly to the UW campus. And at the time, though, and continues to be the case, public health has maintained that they continue to support K2 instruction in person. 4K, interestingly, doesn't have to abide by, I don't know, that's not the way. 4K is not included in the school recommendations. 4K can also align itself to the child care recommendations. Our 4K program, we made the decision to align it to school recommendations. So October 5th is when that started. In addition, that's when the support hub started for grades 5 through 12. Those were invitation only opportunities for students to come into school and to receive specialized services. So the next phase is grades 3 through 5 to follow the in-person half days. And for those of you who are wondering, why half days? It has to do with ensuring that we are able to maintain the 6 feet of distancing. Because if you are a parent in the district, you are probably, particularly a parent of an elementary school student, you have probably received quite a few letters related to COVID-19 positives of students and staff. And you know that we haven't had many incidences where there has been close contact, which you know is defined as, within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. And that's cumulative. And it hasn't happened a lot, actually quite rarely. And one of the reasons is simply the fact that we are able to maintain a small class size and 6 feet of distancing within that class. So we've been able to, as Tim LeBrun mentioned, we've been able to open K2 and keep it open. And the half days, in addition to the social distancing, the half days, 4 days a week, is really coming from the teacher's desire, expressed desire to see the students more frequently, as opposed to full days and then going as long as 5 days without seeing them. So they felt it was more effective for learning and for relationship building to be able to see them in person 4 days a week, as opposed to, or 4 half days a week, as opposed to 2 full days. After we bring in grades 3 through 5, then it'll be subsequently followed by grade 6. We have the unusual situation where our grade 6 is actually in our elementary school. That makes us not a rarity in Dane County. I think there are 4 other districts that have the same thing, but it also means that we'll probably have to have a slightly different phase in than perhaps some other school districts when we get to the grade 6 piece. And then grades 7 through 12 in person would be our final phase. And our principals in grades 3 through 12 have the models ready. They have been established by leadership teams as far as what would be the best way to provide instruction in a physically distant hybrid model as we begin reopening more grades. And we continue to use guidance from multiple sources, although very much lean heavily into the guidance of Public Health Medicine Dane County. And you'll notice that the metrics that were used to inform Dane County and are being used by other school districts across the country, given where we're currently at with our 14-day average, we are sort of off all of the existing charts. And certainly there are people watching this in the group that know much more about it than I do. And it would certainly be an opportunity for those of you who are really enlightened in this to educate the rest of us. But what I did in order to help myself better understand is I went to a resident data analyst, one of our high school math teachers, and said, would you work with me to do all of the calculations to translate our data to each of these models so I have a good understanding of where we're at on each of the models. And he very graciously helped me out. And now you're able to see that we have unfortunately surpassed the highest levels of the existing models. However, I'm assuming that they will be changing in the future also. Finally, we are keeping our families up to date related to the impact of COVID in our school district. Raven is a member of the committee that's very well aware of everything that you see on this particular chart because she is one of the 3 nurses who does the contact tracing for our students. And as you know, timeliness of contact tracing is absolutely critical. If it's not timely, then people come to school the next day without having all of the information that they need. And that is not the way we're going to be able to remain open. We have to be sure we are timely. After the Thanksgiving weekend, I think at this moment in time, we have 6 additional staff members in quarantine. I don't know if it's increased yet today. I'll get an update on that tomorrow. We're very fortunate to not have any students online due to classroom closures at the moment. We're really happy about that. We've worked out great systems to help the kids who have to be in quarantine stay on top of the work that we're missing. I'd say the trickiest part is staff in quarantine because if the staff aren't able to, for our K2 staff, if they're not able to physically be in the room, they're with the children, then there has to be an adult who can be. So even if the teacher is well enough to teach from home in a virtual manner, we still need an adult who will be in the classroom. So that's probably one of our biggest challenges as we continue to bring more grades into the school building is to ensure we have the adults. Oh, timing. This is pretty good, you guys, because we're already on next steps with 10 minutes to go. So as I mentioned, you're able to send me questions if you'd like to think a little bit more about anything I've said and formulate questions, or if there's anything you want to ask at the moment. We have about an additional 5 minutes before we talk about next steps.
Leslie, I just have a quick question. This is Eric. Can you, out of that, if you back up a slide, can you tell us how many students are in school? You say you have 3 students at school that are positive. How many, I guess it'd be useful for us to know how many people were actually staff and students were at school right now.
Sure. I'd say for staff, I think we're in the around, gosh, what would I say? Probably 75. When you think of teachers and paraprofessionals and the food service workers and the bus drivers and everybody who's mobilized at the moment. For staff, it's about, or excuse me, for students, it's about 675 who are in person. We don't know how many cases are currently for out there for students who are not in person because they're not required to report them to us.
Okay, thank you.
Leslie, this is Katie. I just have a question about, do we know anything about Oregon active cases versus compared to Dane County as a whole?
Yes, we do. So there is census tract data to analyze, and I know every week Public Health does the number of communities that have significantly more cases than the Dane County average. And Brooklyn was a number 2 for 3 weeks in a row, and we can remain, Fitchburg remains in there. Now we know not all of Fitchburg is us, about a third of it is. So we have that information in addition to the census tract data. In addition to the fact that it's hovering at around 50% of cases in Dane County are not within Madison proper.
Leslie, this is Evan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have a link I can send out if people want to see that broken down by census tract. They can watch it daily if they want.
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Should I just send that to you to forward, or
Please.
what's the best way to do that?
If you send it to me, I'll start a resource list.
Okay.
That I can send out to the large group. Now, if you notice uncomfortably long pauses, that is because one of the things we have learned during virtual schooling time is that there needs to be an increased amount of wait time as people formulate questions and sometimes struggle to unmute themselves. So we have to make sure we're giving people enough time to ask anything they want to ask. Otherwise, make sure you send it to me and we will ensure that you get the answers that you need in time for our next meeting.
Leslie, the rates that you were just showing right there, that's the current rates as of the 25th. Do you have historic trends showing both the number of students that were in school and the total positivity over time?
I do. We could send that out to the group also.
That might be helpful.
Okay. So now we'll talk about the next steps for the working group and preparing for the December 7th meeting. And then after that, I'll pass it off to my 2 school board colleagues once again, and we'll wrap it up. So preparing for next Monday night's meeting. Later this week, so by Friday, December 4th, I will be sending you a video of the reopening plan for grades 3 through 12 so that everybody understands what we are planning, not just what school will look like, but the type of safety considerations, et cetera, that are put into place for grades 3 through 12 as we begin to roll those grades into in-person learning. And then what we'd really like you to do is take a look at that plan over the weekend prior to the December 7th meeting and prepare to share your thoughts on the key question that is below, which is, given your area of expertise, what is important to consider before implementing each phase of the plan? And you are all bringing something very important to the conversation. So what is it that you would like us to consider or to think about before each stage of implementation? We would really appreciate your professional wisdom in order to ensure that we have the most thoughtful and comprehensive plan possible for re-entry as far as each grade level goes. And that is next steps. And then for the 21st, thinking ahead a little bit here, I'm really hoping that by the 21st, we'll be finishing this work, because between your questions and your the shared considerations, I'm thinking that that work may continue to the 21st. And then I'm also hoping that the updated public health forward Dane plan will be out by that time, and I am told that the new Forward Dane plan will actually include updated information for schools. I don't have a release date. They said they were hoping for early December. So what I'm hoping is that I would have that plan to share with you and to get your thoughts and ideas on by the 21st also. And with that, I'll pass it over to Tim or Krista to make their own closing comments.
Krista?
Uh-oh, is Krista having microphone trouble again? Okay. That happens on occasion with Krista's earphones. So Tim, would you like to start, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining this group. It's we have a relatively large group, as everyone can see and hear. And because of the challenge of not being in one room together, we have, as Dr. Bergstrom mentioned, some uncomfortable pauses, and things move a little more slowly than our day may move. And so I think, that can build up a little bit of frustration that we're not getting more done than we had hoped. And at the same time, everybody's input is important. And so we're going to try to pace through this as expeditiously as possible, but not at the cost of not hearing from what folks are from their professional perspective, as well as from their day-to-day interaction with this virus, whatever that may be. And so, again, it doesn't mean we all have to agree. There are going to be opportunities when we don't agree. We just want to make sure that we're focused on the issue at hand and not on the person. We're all professionals, and I know that we can get a lot done in this group. The other thing that I think is important to note is that a very important part, a very important responsibility that we all have is the connections we have in the community. So often these discussions take place and people don't know, they don't hear what's going on, and so they assume nothing's going on. And clearly that is not the case. We have the time from some very intelligent people with some very specific knowledge who we are asking for help in making decisions and understanding proper protocols and getting feedback from what's going on in your professional lives. And so your connections in the community are equally as important here. People are going to ask you what's going on. People are going to want to know that something is happening. And so we're counting on all of you to be open to those possibilities. Sometimes they're going to catch you by surprise, but I think it's always important to remind whoever is asking what the group's quest is here. Our quest is to get kids back to school safely and to keep them in school safely once they're there. And so please don't hesitate to use your role in the community to leverage our role in the schools. So that's all I wanted to say, that each of us is important, not just in this group, but within our communities. And again, that's 10 different municipalities in 3 different counties. We can't all be there at one time.
Thank you, Tim. And Krista said that you can be the closing comments tonight. So thank you very much for doing that so well. Once again, a lot of gratitude to all of you. And I'm looking forward to hear the input that you will have at our next meeting, December 7th, same time. Google links in your calendar. Make sure you contact me if you had any problems with your links tonight. I want to make sure none of you encounter any hurdles. So,
Tim, Leslie, Krista, can you guys stay on for just a second? And Candace, if you're still there.
Just a reminder, everybody's got a little homework to do before next week. Leslie's going to be sending out that video, so please take some time to review that video, jot down your questions and your perspectives. And next week, I believe We don't want to surprise anybody, but next week, I believe we're going to have a facilitator who is going to just help us get through the agenda, what we want to make sure that we accomplish, and so that Dr. Bergstrom can be an active participant in that, not just the facilitator. So don't be surprised if we have someone new who is helping us facilitate that meeting.
All right. Thank you.
All right, just wait a few
Good night,
minutes.
everyone.
Okay, hopefully.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.